Previously on the conversation piece, we left off with Nicholas Payton finding his voice. This week, we finish our conversation with part 2. We hope you enjoy. So, just to shift gears a little bit, you've played with greats such as, Clark Terry and Elvin Jones and Abby Lincoln, just to name a few, and you've collaborated with Jill Scott and Common, Robert Glasper, Cassandra Wilson, and Little John Roberts. Shout out to him, another friend, and even Patrice Rushen. So let me ask, how do you prepare yourself mentally and spiritually before a project and working with other artists?
I think for every collaboration I've been in, and this is harkening back to the whole life being bigger than music. My life has prepared me and set me up, unbeknownst to me, and have, when I was ready, created a platform and an energetic portal for me to associate with the right people at the right time. And sometimes a relationship can start in one place and maybe you don't talk for another 20 years, and 20 years later you reconvene in another space when it's right. But that 20-year distance was an important part of the growth of that relationship. So just because you may have not physically been in the presence or talked to that person doesn't mean the conversation ended. The energetic force of that has continued to grow in some unseen, perhaps unspoken way. So I'm big on energy, and I trust that more than I trust a lot of things, as far as like maybe man-made things like religion or these types of constructs that to me separate us from our intuitive nature. I strive to be like you, tapped in to that, because I trust those voices. It's the other things externally that have tended to deceive me. So it's always been about coming back home into those things that have been in my spirit and my heart. So, Clark Terry, for instance, being in the All-Star Brass Band, that was the name of the group that I started playing with, the brass band. Went on my first cruise. And again, at this point, I had started listening to the music, going through my father's albums, and Clark Terry was somebody who I knew my father knew and played with. And he had an album called Clark After Dark that I had been a fan of. So when I was on this cruise and I heard, Sarah Vaughan is on this cruise, Dizzy Gillespie was on it, LaRue Brown, who was Clifford Brown's widow, was on it, Clark Terry, Al Gray, all these heavyweights were on this cruise. And I was just like, wow, to be in one space with all these people I had never imagined I would meet, that I get to see and hear them, So I was really excited when James told us we were going on this cruise. He was like, yeah, Nicholas, I want you to go on this cruise with me, but I'm playing the trumpet. I don't want two trumpets. You got to play trombone. And I went from being this excited to like my ship sank. I didn't even play trombone at this time, but you know what? I was like, I want to be on this gig. So I went and bought me a $15 trombone from the pawn shop and hurry up and learn how to play it. And I guess that's also where my multi-instrumental skills came in, because again, when I was 8, 9 years old, hanging out in my father's band room after school, I was just entertaining myself. I would pick up a clarinet, pick up a trombone, pick up this stuff. And I had learned to be facile at playing a lot of different things. And then when I saw Purple Rain, I was really into that movie when it came out. I guess it was 1984. And my mom saw how into it I was. Because I would watch it every day. Because back then, the cable TV they show the same movies all the time. So you can literally watch Purple Rain every day for 6 months.
Right.
And I watched it every night. And my mom bought me the soundtrack. There was a piano book that had all the songs inside from the movie. And in the forward, it said Prince played 20 instruments. And I was like, wow, I got to get on. If I want to be like Prince, I really need to learn how to. So that really made me seek out staying after school and learning all these instruments so I could be like Prince, you know. But opening that part of my mind served me in the situation, because otherwise, if I had been so rigid to be like, I only could play trumpet, I wouldn't have made the gig. So I was like, you know what? I'm just learn how to play trombone real quick. And learning instruments is like learning a new language. Once you learn one, others are easy to pick up, because you begin to see, like, if Latin is the base of several languages, then you begin to see how languages are connected, the interconnected nature of languages. It's the same thing with musical instruments. Once you learn a few, you begin to see how they're all connected, and you don't have to do that same work for each interview. It just you kind of gravitate towards it very quickly. So so I got my trombone chops together and made the gig, and we were doing our first gig, and we were playing, and here come Clark Terry and Al Gray, and they walk right in front of us, and they start listening. I'm like, oh my God, it's Clark Terry. I'm excited, and then again my elevator went down, because I'm like, I'm playing this damn trombone. So we do the gig and we finish, and I make a beeline right to Clark, and he's kind of talking to somebody. And Al Gray, the trombonist, his great friend and great trombonist, played with Count Basie and so many greats. He's like, let me see your trombone, young man. And he picks up my pawn shop trombone, and it's all damaged and rusty. He's like, oh no, you got to work your slide. You know, he's like, come to my room, and you know, I'll teach you, you know, how to fix your instruments so it'll play better and all this stuff. So I'm like, so my whole cruise, I'm trying to talk to Clark Terry, and he's ignoring me. And Al Gray keeps chasing me, because he sees this potential in this mediocre trombonist who's not serious, but he hears something, right? So fast forward 6 months later, James tells me, yeah, we're having a jam session down at the shop. The shop is the place where we used to rehearse in the Treme. And Clark Terry's coming down. I was like, oh, great. So I'm going to have my trumpet now. So we start the session or whatever, you know, and I'm playing, and I'm looking at Clark, you know, like, and I see he lights up, and I was like, yeah, I got him now. So we play a few tunes, and then we finish, and Clark comes right over to me. He's like, man, I didn't know you could play trumpet like that. He was like, all this time, I thought you was some sad trombonist whose arms was too short to reach the sixth position. And that was the beginning of me having a relationship with Clark till he passed away. And he was really the primary voice to connect a lot of the gigs that I had. My first record dates in New York, my first contacts were through Clark Terry and that mentorship. But again, it was designed to happen that way. What that minor disappointment was set up the meeting to make it more special when he actually did see me on my instrument 6 months later, you know. So I trust that in those when you talk about these types of relationships and how they come about, I trust that. Like, you know, Robert Glasper, how did I meet Rob? I had heard about him when he first moved to New York. And the first time I saw him, he was playing somewhere at like maybe at Lincoln Center on a rooftop private event or something like that. It was like, this kid has promise. So I called him. It was about 1999, I feel, the first gig I called him for. And I sent him the music. And I had a tape of a gig that I used to give cats to listen to so they could learn the stuff. Because on the album, you play songs differently. Like on the gig, I wanted him to get a feel for how it really was. So I remember there being these cats in the audience, like, woo, woo, like they were losing their minds the whole time. And he was like, on that tape, you know who that is? He was like, that's us. That's me. He was like, that's me, Mike Moreno, Marcus and EJ Strickland, Bilal. They were
Mm.
all going to the new school at the time, and they
Mm-hmm.
had come to that gig at the Village Vanguard. In fact, I have that gig posted on my SoundCloud. They had all come to that gig. So he had come to that gig that was playing that music from that album. We debuted that music there. So the album wasn't even out yet. So Mike Moreno, the guitarist who would later play with me, transcribed the music from that tape. So Rob already had the chart of the music before the album came out. So when I called him for the gig, he was already ready to do the gig because he was already one at the live gig, and the tape I gave him, he was on. So he was already set up.
Right.
And that was the beginning of my relationship with him playing music, And then he would join my band. Maybe it wouldn't be for another, because I had another pianist at the time he was subbing for.
Mm-hmm.
So he wouldn't join my band for maybe another 10 years. But yeah, just interesting how those things and those connections happen.
Right. Again, that's divine alignment, divine order. And you know how I feel about all that, which actually leads me into the next quote that I absolutely love. I wanted to share for two reasons. One, it speaks to the depth of what you express. And two, in fact, gives people the opportunity to think, truly think outside of the box, and then realize there was never a box in the first place. Right.
Mm.
So this comes from, and you mentioned them a little earlier, this comes from Downbeat Magazine's February 2020 issue with you on the cover. And it says, quote, and it's rather long, but again, I have to share this. So, quote, everything I write is about life experiences. The music means nothing without life, a life lived. It's not just notes on a page. It's not just a technical exercise, excuse me. It's vibrations and energy. And I'm striving to help lift, if possible, raise the vibration of the collective conscious, one audience, one album, one song at a time. If I can't do that, there's no point in me playing. That's why I play. It's about contributing to society and inspiring. That's my life as an artist, period. Challenging people to think differently, to think critically, and to not be slaves to the system and the status quo, end quote. Friend, let's dive into this a little bit more, okay? To me, it feels like, again, I've said this earlier, that about your gift, and reading this, it feels like it's not just a gift to us, but back to the universe for giving you an abundance of gifts and talents. And that goes beyond, like you said, notes on a page. Again, it's like it's a divine experience, right? So how, when, and where did you develop this like Zen nature, this connection? Like, how do you or what do you remember about that divine connection within yourself and the universe?
I think it's always been there. The challenge is, one, when you're born, if you're blessed enough to be born into a situation where that's nurtured, and you're not maybe spooked out of it, because there are plenty babies come here with something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that connectedness is not nurtured, it may be squelched and killed. I was fortunate enough to have parents who knew how to nurture it in a way, so that I um, had some cognizance of it, um, and they encouraged that in a very, they said just enough, not enough to spook me out of it, but enough to make me go within, to figure out what that is. It wasn't until years later, though, that I began to discover Zen in a literal sense, started studying Zen Buddhism. And that period came maybe around 2003, right around the time I'd done Sonic Trance. A band member of mine at the time, Kevin Hayes, who is an extraordinary artist, improviser. He was the first person who I had, how would I say it, who I had interacted with in a band situation, like a nightly playing situation, who, to me, I could just feel he was tapping into something that I was familiar with when I heard the masters, but I hadn't yet heard anyone in our age group who was tapped in like Kevin. And he's also very shy and would be hard to get off information, but I just kind of kept pressing him, like, how do you do what you're doing? Like, how do you create this stuff out of nothing? It reminded me of a lot of like what Herbie was able to do and Keith Jarrett. And finally he told me, like, I study Buddhism, and I was like, aha. And Herbie Hancock does as well. So I was like, okay, let me research some of this. So I was in Barnes and Noble one day and I was looking for books on Buddhism, and I couldn't figure out where I should start. It's like this whole shelf of stuff. And there was a book out, you know how they turn some books where you can see the front cover. And it was called The Buddha in Your Mirror. And it said forward by Herbie Hancock. I was like, this is the book I need to get.
Wow.
So I did. And I read through it. And it was mainly about the Nichiren Buddhism, basically the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo form of it. And so after I read the book, I was like, I want to try out this meditation, see how this works. And I went to the chapter here in New Orleans, and it started with meditation, and I can't remember how long it went, and I found that very calming, and I really identified with it immediately, especially the chanting part, because that's sound, and being a musician, using sound as a way to tap in, that's what I do, But after the meditation, there was kind of like a fellowship, and everybody was more or less talking about chanting about, how I wanted a car, so I chanted for that. I wanted this thing, I chanted for that. And with all due respect, that part of it kind of turned me off, because it's like, I personally don't want to chant for materialistic things. I'm looking for something a little different. So I continued my search. I remember I went to a Tibetan thing, and I'm relating these stories, with the caveat that this is just my experience. This is just not an assault on the practice of these particular sects of Buddhism. This is just what I took and what I experienced in one moment. It could have been totally different if I went there the next week. This is just what I saw and what I took from it. I went to more of a Tibetan school thing, and that was cool, but it was too loose. It was just like, you just meditate however you want, just do, I was just like, I need more structure than that. And I'm an extremist. I'm very much all the way in or not. I don't have much of a middle,
Yeah.
So some kind of way I wound up finding Soto Zen, which is perhaps the most unsexy form of Buddhism there is. There's no glitz and glamour and lights and cloths and all that. It's just you sit, and that's it. And they tell you how to sit, and there's a ritual from them knocking on the wood with a wooden hammer. When it's time to go into the dojo, you walk in a certain way with a certain foot first. You walk all the way around the circle, and you just sit for 30 minutes. And there are these two wooden planks on the wall that are right affixed to where your gaze is. So it's almost like you can't see anything else but this. But it's off-white space. So it's almost like you're looking into nothingness, how this dojo was designed. And after you sit for 30 minutes, they ring a bell or something like that or hit a gong, and you walk in a circle for 10 minutes and do what's called walking meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Then they sound another gong or bell, and then you sit again for another 30 minutes. Then the next song, then you chant for maybe another 15 minutes. And what I took away from that experience is you can meditate silently,
Mm-hmm.
you can meditate in motion, in walking, or you can meditate making sound. And my overall takeaway is that anything in life can be a meditation. It's just bringing that awareness. Playing music is meditative. For instance, years before I studied Zen, or before I even had Kevin open my eyes to Buddhism as a reality for me, I had these moments in my playing where everything would just be tapped in, but it would only last a couple seconds. And I could feel it when it was coming, and it would excite me. And then sometimes it would excite me to the point that I would lose it. And I'd be like, oh. But every time it would come, I began to hold on to it a little longer. Then it would be a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And this happened for a great number of years. Then when I started meditating, I began to realize when I would get into this space, and some people call it a trance, but it's more than that, because trance sometimes connotes that you're shut off,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or that you're focused, but it's a focus, non-focus. It's a thinking, non-thinking. So it's not one or the other. It's kind of everything, because when you do one thing too much, it's like you're almost cutting yourself off from the other things. So there's a thing when you meditate, the mind is in this alpha state where it's more or less a receptor than propagating something, the need for our mind to put thoughts first. Your mind doesn't, you begin to train the mind to listen, basically. Because all all the elements, all the information is there. It's already up there. We just have to learn how to quiet enough so that the things we need, we have access to, immediacy to. So when I began to sit in Zazen, I began to recognize that space as the same space as when I play. It felt the same. I got the same energy in my body, like, oh, that's what that is. And as my practice deepened in the dojo, or even outside the dojo, because I would meditate, even at home too, not just in the dojo, I began to hold on to it more. That's what I was strengthening. And it made me realize why I couldn't hold on to it before, because I hadn't developed my mind yet to be able to hold on to that. And getting back to the thing about certain energies not even approaching you if you haven't done the discipline. I had been disciplining my mind to be able to receive the gift and to hold the gift. Because when you say gift, that's exactly what this stuff is, right? Now, when people say gift, sometimes it's like talent. And I know you know what it means when you say that, but I think a lot of people misunderstand that, like, oh, they're gifted, like they didn't work for that. That doesn't mean that, because you can be gifted and you can be given a gift and you can lose that gift if you don't nurture it, if you don't develop it. Just like the gift I had of ears or certain aptitude for playing a lot of different instruments. But I've also worked very hard to study this craft to be able to hold on to these things. So, you have to value those gifts or they will elude you.
Yeah.
So as my practice deepened, I noticed that I could hold on to it. So whereas it was like 90 minutes, 2 minutes, now I could do it for one song, 2 songs. It kept expanding. And this is like maybe a year later into my practice. It's 2004. I'm in this group called the SF Jazz Collective, which was the flagship band of the SF Jazz organization. And we normally would rehearse for a couple weeks, take a break for a couple of days, and then hit the road for a tour. So when we took a break, I went home for a couple of days. I got sick on the plane and some sinus thing. And when I got back to the tour, I was still a bit sick. And as a wind player, as a trumpet player, when your sinuses, that messes with everything because you're breathing. And I can't breathe efficiently. So as a result of being sick, all the stuff I would normally worry about is, and everybody in the band wrote music, and there's some challenging music because at the time is, Josh Redman is in the band, Miguel Zanon, Josh Roseman, Bobby Hutcherson was on Vibes, who was like a spiritual guru, who was on, this was the second edition of the group. So, and this was, who was on bone? Isaac Smith was on trombone, right? Matt Penman was on bass, Eric Holland was on drums, and Rini Rosnes on piano. And the tribute was Coltrane for that year, which again is aligning because Coltrane is known for his spirituality in music. So it was a very heavy burden of the weight of Train's music starting this season's tour. So the normally stuff I would worry about, like, oh, Miguel wrote this song with this high E at the end of it. I got to pace myself for that. Josh wrote this. All of that stuff had to go away. And it was just about, I just need to make it through this gig because I'm sick. And because Nicholas was sick, I couldn't get in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And the music had flowed through me in a way that it hadn't to that point. And that feeling that was once 30 seconds to whatever, I had it the whole gig. I was in the zone. I was like Michael Jordan in the finals with a broken ankle. And everybody else could feel it. It was palpable in the band because even stuff I did normally solo on, Josh was like, give Nick the ball. He's got it tonight. And he kept giving me solos, and I just kept knocking it out of the park. And the energy was so palpable, like that feeling sisters get in the church when they get the Holy Spirit and their bodies shake. I could feel the music coming through, and it would move me. I would convulse like that. And my trumpet was like a lightsaber. And I could literally take that energy coming from here through my crown, through the instrument, and point it right there. And that person would go, woo. It was that palpable. And if you get the album, because someone brought this solo up to me recently, they were like, man, that solo you took, I know who it was, a guy who plays bass with me sometimes, Alex Claffey. He's like, man, that solo you took on Crescent was, phenomenal. I was like, yeah, that's that night. That was the first night I like transcended. And the funny part is after that, everybody was congratulatory at the end of the night. And for me, like, my ego was like, I figured it out. I understand the secret now. I got it. Yeah, the next night I sounded like shit, because I tried to recreate and I couldn't. But it set me on a path. It was like, well, now I know it's possible. Now I know this is not just some elusive, magical thing that happens to me. That if I do the work, it's possible to sustain and keep this feeling and to make this the standard. To now, 20 years later, minimally, I'm tapped in.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a good or bad night is beside the point.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I play. That's where I need to be when I play music all the time. I don't accept anything less. And from that moment on, just playing music is never enough for me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't enough. I need to be that tapped in. That's where I need to be minimally. And whatever I need to do to my body, mind, spirit to condition it to when I play, I'm ready to do that, then that's what I need to do because it's sacred. And I can't accept just doing a gig.
Right.
After that.
And it was felt when you were here in St. Louis in January.
Oh.
I mean, it was, oh yeah. I mean, I can feel it now. Like I got my tissue here and I'm like, do I pull my tissue up to wipe my eye? Because I'm about to tear up. But, yeah, I mean, that's how I feel when I write. My father told me I was a writer since I was 5 years old. I'm not a writer. And then I tapped in probably, well, I would write little poems and stuff, but I say I really tapped in when I got on Facebook.
Mm.
And I would share these different quotes and everything. And I literally heard, you can do this on your own. And then I would just share quotes. And then I started a blog myself. And I was just, and I rarely read what I write. Rarely. I do it, for grammatical purposes, but I never, rarely, I won't say never, but rarely go back and read. And when I do, I'm like, I, I wrote this? But I have to remember that, I don't really have to remember. I know that I'm just the vessel. So I really don't take a lot of credit for that. But I totally get what that experience. It's life changing, you know?
Yeah.
And that actually, this is a perfect segue into the book, The Zen Gangster, right? Isn't that the
Yeah.
title?
The
So,
full title of the book is Notes from the Zen Gangster.
okay.
Mhm.
And how did this come about?
It's interesting because post the Zen period, and like yourself, I never considered myself a writer. Uh, in fact, in school, I remember I didn't like creative writing projects. But now that I think about it, I feel like my disdain for writing in my youth had to do more with the vulnerability of it. I felt like I had a voice and I had things to say, but writing was much too literal to share those things that for me were my personal thoughts. Music was a good way to share the same thing, but you can kind of hide behind the notes because music is artistic. It's it's um it's up to perception and opinion what you might be saying one way or the other. Some of that exists in words, but it's obviously more literal and people can directly see, even though they can still contort your words or misperceive. It's more direct. And I think I avoided writing because of that in some sense. Um, but I had a period where I was going through some things. Uh, my marriage at the time was kind of dissolving. Uh, I was going through some embouchure problems. I needed to change my approach to the instrument. And then I had gotten all of it kind of culminated in this auto accident. I wasn't really physically hurt in a certain sense, like, but it shook something in me. And I just needed to slow down. And so because I wasn't playing, that energy was coming through. I just started writing one day and I just couldn't stop. And to the point where I got this book and I just started jotting these little things down as they would come to me. And the thing is, and as I'm sure you understand this too, when you begin to let it flow through you and receive like that, then it'll come to you. When you fight it, it won't, you know what I mean? It won't
Yeah.
come to you. I stopped fighting it. I just let it come through me. And when I first started, the concept wasn't necessarily doing a book, but as I started compiling more things, maybe about a couple months in, I was like, yeah, I think I got something here. And it took maybe 15 years of me just gathering quotes. And very early on, it was like, I want to do like a Zen, basically like a Zen coffee table book. Like you have these calendar thought of the day, but I don't want it to be dated to a calendar. I want it to be, for wherever you are in the year or whatever day it is, it can be applicable. So the idea was getting 365 quotes plus one for the leap year. Whittled that large database I had amassed of quotes down, and I had the help of a friend of mine, Scout. She was also the editor for the book to help me comb through these things. And I told Scott, I was like, I'm hiring you to do this, but push back on me. Don't be respectful, but push back. Like if something don't make sense or whatever, challenge it, because people are going to do that. And I trust your intellect. You're going to comb through it in a way. And sometimes we'd have these powwows on a particular thing I said, if I could say it in such a way, or, voice it in such a way that could make it clearer. Oftentimes it was like, well, I don't understand it. It's like, that's okay too. Not everything is to be understood. Sometimes I don't understand it. It's how it makes you feel sometimes, and that challenge and what that opens up. It's not about some life lesson that's going to change. Some things do pack that kind of wallop. Some things just inspire the brain to function in a certain way. And that is the sole purpose. And then maybe years later it'll hit me, or what that means or whatever. But I don't like to imbue a meaning to it, because I'm often interested how someone else, they teach me reading it, what that means. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have took that from it. When you tap into something universal, it can mean something different to every person who reads it. And that's more what I'm interested in. It's just like the music. Every person in that audience, we're here sharing this collective experience. Some of this stuff, we all feel the same way. It may bring a tear. It may make somebody else laugh. We don't know how it's going to impact somebody. So I'm interested in how these things, I don't want to imbue a meaning to it. It's just something to get this rolling, or to get it to stop, whatever that means to you.
It just is.
There you go.
When's the release date?
It's a good question. I am trying to figure out how to distribute this book. I got a warehouse full of books ready to sell, and I have for the last maybe year. I haven't figured out how I want to sell it yet. Okay. So maybe somebody seeing this, if you're a distributor, you can.
Absolutely, you never know.
Yeah.
You know what? I have so many more questions, but I don't want to take up a lot of your time. However, because I do have more, but I'm just going to kind of wrap it up. I'm going to put 2 in 1. Who or what inspires you? And who is Nicholas Payton?
As I said earlier, as you life, yeah, obviously as a musician, great artists like Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock and people like that. But not just that, painters, Picasso, comedians, Chappelle, Red Fox, Bill Burr, I guess the through line of people or things that inspire me tend to be like-minded individuals who I can recognize a certain spirit of being tapped in that way. That has been the theme of kind of our conversation today. Hence, how I've been drawn to you is that before I even got familiar with you, reading the things I would post, I'd be like, yeah, she gets it. And those are the kind of things that I'm drawn to, really, is people and energies, those who are tapped into something greater. Because that I learn from that. And I love to learn more than anything in this life, because that's growth. Yeah. And as we grow, we get closer and closer to our purpose. So to the second part, who am I? That is an ever evolving thing, that layers begin to reveal themselves on a daily level, because that's why I'm in it. I'm in this thing as ultimately a student. And yeah, ultimately a musician, but also I've become a writer in the last 20 years, a thinker, ultimately. And all these things come from that. Music is just one aspect of my creativity. I strive to live life itself as an art form. That is the art. is how to live, how you eat, how you view things, what you wear, how you move about in the world, how you deal with people. Striving to be more and more authentic and honest, particularly in spite of the convenience. Because as you know, what's honest is not always the most convenient. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, lying is harder
Yeah.
because you got to remember all the, and it doesn't really suit me. I'm not a good liar either. My poker face is like, I guess I have one, but I also don't. So I'm not good at faking and being and pretending, and I don't have the time or interest. And nothing. And the other thing I get from my parents is like they raised me not to be afraid of anything, and that's not to say I'm without fear. But regardless, if I'm afraid of doing something, I still have the guts to do it. Regardless, you do it afraid.
Yeah.
Don't let it stop you from doing it. We need fear. If people talk about these issues like fear, like if it's a bad thing, we need fear. Fear protects us. Fear is if somebody's throwing something, it'll instinctively make me raise my arm to block it.
Right.
It tells us maybe we shouldn't go in that house, or maybe we should, we need to listen to it. It's just like ego, which gets a bad rap, but we need ego. Another quote from my book: "Wherever I go, ego." Can't separate ego from who you are.
Yep.
We need it. Ego tells you to get up in the morning. Ego, get some breakfast, practice, meditate, whatever the things that make you healthy. If you had no ego, you wouldn't do those things that are healthy for you. You need a healthy. It's the overinflated ego that's unhealthy,
Absolutely.
and that's too much of anything, as they say, is not good. And that's how I look at it, at all of it. Is to strive to not even in that as a Libra. We're told to create balance. I don't know if balance really exists. I think I find sometimes my modicum through, again, being an extremist and going all the way this way and all the way that way. Okay, I understand the full breadth of it. I want a full experience. And that's what I'm here to learn. And if I can help others so that they may not make the mistakes that I made, or impart something that would open the minds of somebody, even elder or mentor, as a story I shared about the African cowboy. You never know who people who have taught you, sometimes you can be a lesson to.
Yep.
As my child has often been a lesson and a reflection of me. Sometimes we can learn things from anyone. So to be humble enough in some sense, and I know you have an issue with that word as I do. But when I look at humility, it's not necessarily being meek as much as it is being open enough that in any situation you can learn something. There's something you can take away from it.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm here to do. Learn as much as I can. And if I can help others along the way, as many people as I can, so be it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
And have a good time and have fun,
That's my motto.
I ain't
Have
no martyr.
fun.
I ain't no martyr for any of this shit either. Like,
Yeah.
I want to enjoy. I want to laugh as much as possible.
That is my motto. Have fun.
Yeah.
Just remember to have fun. Like, it's not supposed to be that serious, So what else is on the horizon for you?
Trying to sell this book. I have about 4 or 5 albums that are done or near completion that I need to get out too.
Okay.
So I guess I have a burden of riches, in a sense that I have so much that I don't know what I want to do next. I need to start getting some of this stuff out there for no other reason than to make room for more stuff to come. Because if you hold on to stuff, I think other stuff doesn't even come to you. So maybe 2025 is a year of getting more of these projects out to the world.
The year of release. And how can we find you, Nicholas?
Live on nicholaspayton.com. You can see where I'm gonna be performing in a town near you. On Instagram. They took my Facebook. Maybe I'll try to get back on there. Still on Twitter, but I don't really do much there. So social media, I'm probably more on Instagram than anything. And then, of course, come see me live.
Well, this has been a pleasure. Thank
Always.
you, my friend. Thank
And
you, my
congrats
friend.
to you. You've been talking about this since I've known you, and to
I
see it
know.
come to fruition and to be one of your first guests is an honor.
Thank you.
And I know this is going to be big, and I can say, I remember when. That's my
Yes.
best.
Thank you. And I want to thank our amazing Conversation Peace family. And remember to love always. Thank you.